Hello and welcome back. I'm Eric Sunset, your host of the Doc Buddy Journal. Here at Doc Buddy, we deliver healthcare solutions that take the pain and cost out of broken workflows, like with our OpNote solution, which gives ASCs the power of instantly generated operative reports approved from the point of care. You can learn more about OpNote and all of our products at docbuddy.com. And today we've got a great guest. We're joined by Jessica Bush. Jessica is the CEO of Real Change RN. She's got over 20 years of leadership and nursing experience. She's a certified Maxwell Leadership Facilitator, trainer, and professional coach. She's also a certified Peri-Anesthesia registered nurse and a certified patient experience improvement specialist. Jessica, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I'm excited that you're here too, and hopefully that was a fair shake on your intro. What else should listeners maybe know about you though?
Yeah, I'm just here to see how I can help the world around me. I've had an opportunity to be on both sides of the bed as a patient and as the nurse and provider and as the healthcare leader and administrator. So kind of having that full circle of what it's like all the way around, I think makes me a little bit different from a lot of other healthcare leaders. And so I like to bring that full, fresh perspective into my talks.
You get a 360-degree view of the situation. And speaking of talks, part of the reason we're together today is you're actually the keynote speaker for this week's Georgia and South Carolina joint semi-annual conference over there in Hilton Head, South Carolina. And that's a pretty tall billing there. Keynote speaker. Your talk is "Be the Leader That People Don't Want to Leave." And without giving away too much, what can you tell us about your speaking engagement?
Yeah, that comes from experience again, being on the receiving end of leaders who really didn't know how to lead and then becoming a leader myself and trying to figure out how to navigate, how to create teams, how to be a person that influences other people. What is it like and what does it take? And so this week we're going to bring it to the teams and let them know, hey, you have the opportunity to be the leader that nobody wants to leave, and you can make a difference not only for your teams but for yourself as well. So it's going to be inspiring, it's going to be great, and they're going to take away a lot of great tools.
That's going to be a good speaking slot. I think it's 8:30 a.m. on Friday to kick off the main event for the show. And you hit the nail on the head with being able to be a leader that people don't want to leave. That's such an important factor for the surgery center, from the patient experience side to physician engagement. Before we started to record, we were touching on the significance of that patient experience and maybe how culture at an ASC can impact that. Obviously, leaders need to drive that culture and define what it means to be an employee at the surgery center. What are some of your thoughts there?
I think that there's been a lot of attention on patient experience this year because, ASCs are required to implement the mandatory OAS caps beginning next year. And so this idea around patient experience surveys has become somewhat of a buzzword, if you will. But I think the one thing that we're really missing to communicate to our ASC leaders is why the patient experience is so important. And it's not just about doing surveys, but it hits so many things like reimbursement, reviews, referrals, and your ASC's reputation. So I think about it like this. Eric, tell me, if you were to go on a vacation, how would you go about selecting a hotel?
Oh, you got to look at the reviews first and foremost, right?
Yeah,
Price is a
you
factor.
exactly. So the reviews or the star rating. So like if you can afford a 5-star hotel, you would choose that. But after you picked your star rating, what do you do next?
Oh, well, we talked about this. I've got two young daughters. We got to know how the pool is. Is there a lazy river? Where can we feed them on property? I mean, you're looking at all the different angles that make the stay memorable or enjoyable.
Exactly. And that is exactly what the OAS CAP survey does. Is it looks at all of the things that patients have an interest in and it allows them to compare apples to apples. Because let's face it, there's surgery centers and hospitals all over. There's 10 within a 10-mile radius of my house here. And so if I needed to get a knee replacement, how do I choose which one to go to? It is not just about your physician, but it's also about what kind of place is that? What are the customer reviews saying? Is there a high rate of infection? Do the staff care about me? there's a lot of extra things that go into the patient experience that not only affects your reimbursement in 2025, but it also affects what kind of place you are, what you're known for, and what you stand for. And so I'm excited because, as a patient myself, um, we had a lot of time in the hospital situation on the receiving end. And I'll tell you, if the staff is great, your experience is great, but if the staff isn't, your experience isn't either. And so there's a lot of things that goes into creating that. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today.
Yeah, and you're hitting on a topic that's been hot and has kind of cooled and maybe has emerged around patient surveys as the header, but the consumerization of healthcare. Patients seem to have a lot more choice choosing their surgery center than they do maybe their primary care physician. Especially if you've been seeing the same provider for a decade or longer, you're not really going to be out shopping around, likely. Whereas compared to the surgery center, you've got a lot of choice there, and it's very competitive both for the facility and for the providers.
Yeah, absolutely. And that competition is what drives performance, right? And so that's what OAS CAPS does is it creates those benchmarks. So how you're measuring up in that competition. And competition in the surgery center is fierce, and you want to be on top. And as everyone is starting to come into the pool, you're going to see really how well you're performing, and so will your patients. And so will your prospective surgeons. And so will your nurses who are looking for a new place to work. Nobody really wants to work at a mediocre place, right? Unless you're a mediocre person, but that's not who we want to draw. We want to be excellent and we want to have excellent staff and excellent surgeons. And to do that, you have to have an excellent culture.
And the outcome there at the end of this production line is a excellent patient experience, an excellent patient outcome. So what are some of the things it takes to ensure you achieve those benchmarks?
Well, it all starts with the staff. An engaged staff is motivated by an effective leader. At Real Change, we specialize in leadership development, workplace culture transformation, change management, and quality improvement. All of those pillars really goes into creating and mastering a positive patient experience. And so often, we identify a nurse who serves as a great charge nurse and promote them to a manager, give them a budget and a roster, but never teach them how to lead. See, the reality is that people don't leave their job, they leave their boss or their workplace culture, right? The job is the same no matter where you go, with maybe a few different nuances. But if you want to create a positive patient experience, you have to develop leaders who create and engage staff. And as a Maxwell Leadership trainer, facilitator, and coach, we have a curriculum that has been helping leaders grow and to develop the leader within. And so we're seeing this new onset of transformational leadership really taking root in the healthcare industry because people don't want to be controlled. There's a new way of leading now. With 5 different generations in the workforce, we have to change our approach. So now what we're realizing is that people want to be led, and everyone deserves to be led well. So if you want to develop your business, you have to develop your leaders. And creating a positive patient experience starts at the top, not at the bedside.
I have a few different paths we can take here with that sort of classic ASC scenario. You're taking somebody on the clinical operations side a lot of times, and you need an administrator or business office manager. Say they're great at what they do. They're going to be even better as an administrator or BOM. What do you do to kind of help soothe nerves that, okay, now I'm in charge of money to an extent I haven't been before. So the budget and my finances, I need to have all of that in order. And that's math. I'm pretty good at math. I can, do most of this off the top of my head. But now I have to lead people. And now I'm expected to change who I am, maybe not, to be an effective leader. Where do you start there? Because that's got to be nerve wracking for some.
It is nerve wracking. And if it's not, then I'm concerned, right? And so you have to treat everyone as an individual. What is it that moves them the most? What is it that they worry about the most? What keeps them up at night? Where do they see their biggest gaps at? and really starting at the basics, because you have to lay a foundation for really what you want your leadership style to be. And the reality is that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. People want to be seen, valued, and affirmed. And so if you're only leading, if people are following you, so what is it going to take for people to want to follow you? And so what we've learned is that influence is the differentiating factor, where people, when they're connected to you, you have influence over their behavior. And once you have influence, then you can get the right to lead. And so going back to basics about what it takes, just to be a good human, connecting with other good humans. Don't worry about carrying this new leadership title, because it's just a title. It doesn't get you anything other than the right to lead. But you're only leading if you're influencing, right? And so some of the things that we help teach leaders about influence is that you have to be real. And we've created a little mnemonic that helps kind of bring this home. And I'll share it with you guys if you'd like.
Please, yeah, gotta
It's
hear it now.
So when you think about being real, it's not just about being authentic, but the R stands for being relational. People want to connect with you on a human level. And when you care about them and you care about their family and the things that are important to them, then you begin to matter to them back, right? And so R is relational. E is empathetic. Empathetic means not just trying to feel sorry for someone, or help them in their situation, but really taking the approach to where you care about them. You care about their outcome. You care about what they care about, and that gives them meaning. When you have a leader that cares about you, it makes all of the difference. So being really relational, being empathetic, A is authentic. People just want you to be yourself, and you have to kind of learn what yourself looks like. One of the sayings that John Maxwell is, you have to know yourself to grow yourself. And so beginning that self-awareness journey to what your leadership style looks like is going to help you as you begin to build your foundation to be a new leader. And then the last one is active listening, and that's something that we all have room to grow in. From my experience, especially, I'm the worst of them all. Is in healthcare, we get so used to solving problems, right? We go right into solutioning and moving to the next thing. And so, how often do we overlook things that really could have made a difference in our outcomes? And so when you can be real with your teams and be real with your patients, that creates connections that build bridges. And those bridges are what not only connect you to your teams and to your patients, but to your surgeons, to your community. It's all about showing up and deciding, how do you want to show up today? What does that look like? What does that feel like? And as you learn and grow in who you are as a leader, this foundation here will set the course to actually have followers, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense, and I can't help but quip. It sounds like Machiavelli's The Prince is not a part of this curriculum.
There's so much to learn, and there's so much that we don't know. But one thing that we do know is that when you care about people, that it makes a big difference. And if you want to be a leader that people want to follow, it starts with caring about them. People want to know, can you help me? Can I trust you? And do you care about me? And if you can answer yes to those three questions, then you can ask their permission to be their leader. But until then, you're just managing. And managing the people aspects of delivering a service can really get excessively challenging, right? You want to get to the point to where you're leading people who are doing that. That's what leadership is. It's not about just managing all these little things, but it's more about a bigger picture about how do you partner with people to get them where they want to be, right? That's leading.
Well, there's a big difference, at least in my mind, and you're the expert here, so jump in if I go astray. But obviously, businesses have metrics that they need to meet. If you're simply managing, saying, "Hey, this one wasn't good enough. What's the problem? Why can't you do better?" That's very different than, "Hey, we're looking at the numbers and we're not trending exactly how we want to. What do I need to do for you so that we as a group hit this number?"
Yeah, and that goes kind of back to one of our other philosophies is that people you don't want to be controlled, they want to be led. And how do you lead people? Well, you lead them by coaching. And so I would approach that situation with curiosity. What was it that got in the way? What were the barriers here that inhibited us from reaching our KPIs? What are the things that we're doing well? What are the things that we can do better? See, so often we forget to go to where the work is being rendered, kind of that lean management mindset. Go to the work that's being delivered and branded. you know all of these things happen at the bedside. And so if you don't know what's going on at the bedside, you don't know what you need to affect change in. But the people there delivering your brand, hey, they know what's working, they know what's not working, and they know what needs to be changed. And so ask them, bring them into the conversation, because I'll tell you one thing: when it's your idea and your solution, you're going to be the only one doing it. But if it's their ideas, their solutions, then they will be the ones doing it. And again, that's leadership.
If we can go back just a little bit to the conversation, I referenced this new administrator, new business office manager. This may be great at their current role, whether that was being the charge nurse or whatever it was in the surgery center. They need some leadership help. That's probably the more common type of group that you work with. But what about the other side, where you've got a really strong, charismatic individual, great at connecting with their coworkers, their superiors, their subordinates? And that's not the right way to say that. I am aware that's just what came to mind first. They'd say, okay, great, you're the leader, but you got to be a little more analytical. We need some more metric-driven decision making to happen, because everything's fine, but you need to be paying attention to these numbers at your computer screen. Do you ever see any of that?
All the time. The thing is that we have to kind of shift from trying to find people who are good at everything. Because guess what? Who is actually good at everything? One of the ASCs that I'm doing some awesome consulting work at, they have switched over to a strengths-based leadership system. And what they're doing is we spent like a day, basically in kind of a retreat mode where we uncovered what every leader in the team was really good at. And then we had some charge nurses who also were kind of part of this team conversation. And what we did is we began to divvy up the work so that all of the leaders were able to serve in their strength zone. And so what happened was a bunch of exhausted leaders who really weren't engaged in the process anymore, because leadership is hard. They began to shift into their strength zones. They began to communicate more, collaborate more, and do what they loved. And what we found is it solved nearly all of our problems. Our charge nurses rose up, they took a portion. Our coordinators rose up, they took a portion. Our managers, rose up, and they still oversee. But being able to identify what your strength zone is, and then resource the things that you're not good at. You're not going to be good at everything, and that's normal. But who do you know that's good at that thing? Or who do you know that can help solve this problem? There's a lot of ways to get to where you're going. You only know a way, right? But there's many ways. And so as we have these conversations and begin to open up your mind to possibilities, the sky is the limit. You can do all things. You just need to have, the resources, the team, the mindset, and the motivation.
Well, I want to hear more about the strength zones too. I would imagine there's quite a few of them, but what are some of the major, the most prominent strength zones that you look at?
You hit the nail on the head in healthcare is analytics. We are so good at analytics. Everyone kind of knows like the process, way of it, but not everyone is actually good at the people side. And so when you can bring in someone who is really good at the people side, that's your cheerleader. That's the one that motivates your team. The one that's able to keep things going, the fun person that has all of the unit parties, right? Everyone's having a potluck when this person is working. And then you have the people who are good at teamwork. They know how to bring the teams together so that everyone is helping each other. And then you have, the people they just like to lead. But we still need those people, the people who have the broad shoulders, who can step forward and give us, some vision, to the day. And everyone kind of has their own thing that they're good at. But when you have someone who's good with people, someone who's good with process, someone who's good with systems, someone who's good, in all of these different areas that we bring into healthcare, those are the people that you all want at your table. And if you don't want people who just think like you, because you're only going to get what you've already gotten. You want things to be different. You want to be able to expand your mind and expand your approach, because people are different. And so when you begin to diversify not only your friend group, your colleague group, but your thinking, wow, you unlock a whole new area of possibilities and strengths that you didn't even know that you had. And there's always going to be weaknesses in us. And what I have learned in patient experience is not to focus on the patients who give you a 1 or a 2. There's no way you're really going to be able to get them up to a 5. But if you focus on the patients who give you a 3 or 4, what would it take to get you to a 5? Those are the things that has a little bit more opportunity to reach that low hanging fruit.
Yes, the old NPS score conundrum for those on the vendor side, the net promoter score. What are the things I'm curious about, Jessica, is we've invoked analytics, we've invoked systems a couple of times. Do you see any differences in the successful operation of ASCs? And you can certainly do it both ways, but the successful operation of ASCs, of those with an electronic health record versus those without? And just for clear definitions for our audience, every ASC has at least a practice management software. So patient accounts, your billing, your scheduling, call that the PM. But on the clinical record side, the EHR side, is there any difference that you see, or any meaningful difference?
Well, there's a lot of difference from a nursing standpoint. I can't really speak to the operation standpoint, but as a nurse, when you don't have all of those buttons to click in the EHR, you have to think critically, and it's really challenging to help people remember how to think critically if they haven't practiced it recently. And so, what I love about EHR systems, and even your product there at Doc Buddy, is the opportunity for things to be clear, concise, and it prompts you, reminds you where to fill in the gaps. Oftentimes, when you're going from patient to patient, or room to room, you forget things. That's normal, right? But when you have systems that are in place that could remind you and prompt you, then you can deliver a more comprehensive patient experience. And I think that's the real deal, to focus on.
Yeah, I obviously am biased, but think you're absolutely right. It's such an interesting spot that the ASC is in. Withheld for meaningful use, so nobody's making you buy an EHR, unlike on the hospital and the practice side. I wonder if there's not a future where that doesn't change, though. And this is just conjecture. But as more and more of these procedures come off the IPO, that would be like a Medicare type procedure. I just wonder if there isn't a future where Medicare says a lot of data we're not getting. Let's fix that.
Yeah, it's coming. It just takes a little while for them to get caught up.
Too funny. And I think you're probably right about that too. So coming back to sort of the central theme around culture in the ASC, great leaders as a rule are able to make great hires and retain great staff. This is a tough job market, though, to be on the facility side. And it seems to me, from the folks that I talk to and our clients and the folks that we see at shows like Georgia and South Carolina, which we'll both be at this week, the ability to make a hire is harder than it's ever been. Any idea why?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why. One of the reasons why is after COVID, 40% of nurses left the profession. Hello. There has been a big shift in so many ways in healthcare. And from a nursing approach, there is everything that is different. Nothing is the same. Patients aren't the same. Practice isn't the same. You used to be able to, even your own coping mechanisms are not the same. What used to work for you, it doesn't work anymore. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to do what we've always done and expecting a different response. people want to have something different from their workplace, and what they're looking for is a place of belonging, a place that values them, a place that hears them, a place where they matter. I was looking at some research around this. What does it take, to increase employee engagement or make employees happy? And they did this study where, if we give them a pizza party, how long does that increase engagement? If we and give them a raise, how long does that increase engagement? If we have their leader give them a handwritten note once a week, how long does that increase their engagement? And so, Eric, which one do you think lasted the longest to increase engagement?
Pizza parties are great. A little more money in the bank account's always great, but I'm at a point. I'm gonna guess number three, the appreciation.
Well, let me ask you. So, when you get a handwritten card, from one of your clients, doesn't that mean something to you?
Oh, totally. It's such an oddity now. Nobody writes notes for anything. It's all email or text, and it's not the same.
And do you keep it?
I actually do, believe it or not. I file them all away. I have so few of them that it's not a hard record to keep.
You know what? And it's because, everyone needs encouragement, right? We all need to know that what we're doing is valued, that it's making a difference, that we're reaching someone. And that goes back to leadership. You know, um, we want our teams to know that you see them, that you hear them, and that you want them. And I'll tell you, there once you can create the culture, that is likened to that of a family, it makes all the difference. I remember back in my early days in nursing, I was working on a really challenging step down unit with vented patients and IV drips, and it was the hardest unit in the entire facility, and it was midnight shift at that. But I worked there on that shift with those peers for more than 5 years. And the reason that I stayed was because of the team. We took care of each other. We helped each other. One of the mottos was, no one sits unless we all sit. And so when you're having, these acute patient situations and this heavy load, you have to have a team approach. It's the same as when you're trying to run an operating room. Everyone has to be doing their part in order for that surgery to go well. And so each of those pieces is dynamic and required, and one cannot be good enough without the other. And so when you can communicate that value to your team members and they sense how they fit in to the overall mission and vision of the organization, that does something, to where when you go to work, you know that what you do today, it matters. And not only does it matter to your team, but it matters to your patients, it matters to your community, it matters to the surgeon. That's meaningful work. And we all want to be a part of meaningful work, so that when we go home, we are happy with how we did us today, how we showed up, what we delivered, and what the outcomes were. That's when you can lay your head down at night and rest in peace, knowing that you did your best. And that all comes from leaders, setting the bar, communicating the way, modeling the way, showing the way, going the way, and leading first, and that creates a culture where people won't leave.
Well, I got to ask you this too. There's a lot of leaders that do listen to this podcast, but what about for those that aren't in a leadership position? And what you just walked through would be the utopian job environment, meaningful work, alignment with the organization, a leader that you can trust and that trusts you back. That's the exact opposite of all of the physician and nurse burnout studies that have been released, since time immemorial. It's out of alignment with the organization. My work doesn't feel meaningful. I'm doing too many bureaucratic tasks. The bottom line is it's just not meaningful work. It doesn't feel like meaningful work. So what do you say to that person?
I say, you know what? Why don't you spend some time and look and see what matters to you? What are your core values? What are the things that are most important to you? Like two of my core values is kindness and respect. So whenever I'm in a situation, whether it's a leadership position where I'm doing performance behavior reviews, or if I'm in the boardroom or wherever I am, kindness and respect are there with me, and people know that that's what I expect and that's what I deliver. And so going back to the things that matter to you, yeah, you're right, that may not matter to somebody else, but what does matter to you? How do you want to show up every day? Because you're responsible for your own fulfillment. You can't look to a job, a provider, a spouse even, to give you fulfillment, right? That fulfillment needs to come from within. So, who are you at your core? What do you believe at your core? What kind of person do you want to be? How do you want people to describe you? Because you are branding yourself every day with your behavior, right? So what do you want that brand to look like? What do you want it to represent? How do you want people to remember you? And so rather than placing all of that weight on what others are going to do for you, just look inward. You have to know yourself to grow yourself. And when you can know yourself in a way that you know what's fulfilling to you, you know what your purpose is, and you know how to fuel that passion, it's a passion that doesn't run out. For me in nursing, if I would go too long without really connecting with one of my patients, I would shrivel up to like a dried up raisin. Like my spirit would just be like dry, and I would be sad and depressed and a little crabby. But when I would take the time to connect with my patients and get to know them and just be able to make a difference for them, to see them and hear them, that gave something to me. And we know from research that whenever you can give something to someone, that actually deposits into your emotional bank account. I was just looking at another research study around well-being, and they were saying that whenever you give gratitude, that the deliverer and the receiver both have an immediate 10% increase in happiness. Well, how is that? Well, because you both get a little shot of dopamine. You both get a little happiness chemically out of that action. And so delivering gratitude, being thankful for what you have, those are the things that help you be fulfilled and happy. You're always going to have things to do, and the work is tough. But if you don't fill yourself with what you need to be your best self, you'll always run dry.
I'm going to try to paraphrase you here, and let me know. Let me know how I do. So I know you'll know this phrase or this term, Jessica, but we're talking about the locus of control, and it's a psychological spectrum. And this is for our listeners. Either you have a high internal locus of control or a high external. Either you do things or things happen to you. Based on what you just described, it sounds like a shift to the higher or a higher shift of perception of the internal locus of control, and maybe more agency in how you choose to go through your day is a lot of the key to this. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely it is. Because at the end of the day, you're responsible for yourself, and you're the only one that you actually have control over, right? So why not just do a good job and be happy, right?
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
easier said than done. There are some tough situations to be in, and it isn't always easy to skew to that internal locus of control side of the spectrum. So certainly sympathetic to those in extraordinary circumstances or extraordinarily difficult spots. So don't want to take anything away from that, but at some level, there's still a choice to be made.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for clarifying that and bringing that up, because we've gone through our fair of hardships as well. But I think it's really through those hardships that I've learned to exercise those muscles. And life is hard, and leadership is challenging, healthcare is challenging. But I hope that you take the time to find out what really matters to you, each of our listeners, and to give yourself those things, to schedule those times where you can honor yourself, to really begin to look at what means something to you, what your values are, and then make sure that lines up with your calendar. You know, that you can just be happy in it is with whatever it is that you're doing, because whenever you're happy, you create happiness with other people. And going back to leadership and creating a place that influences people to stay, we have to partner with each other. This life is not meant to be done alone. And creating the community around you where you could lock arms and walk and grow together, that helps so much, especially in those difficult times, because we often feel we're alone, but you're not. You're not alone. And somebody probably has gone before you, and they need to help you as much as you need them. Yeah. But thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, you bet. I'm not sure I have a great segue there, and we're getting kind of close to time. So, one of the things I love to ask the guests of the show to kind of wrap up our episode is around AI in healthcare, artificial intelligence in healthcare. And there's all kinds of applications being discussed. Some are a lot more real than others. Some of the classics are around diagnostics and imaging, being able to detect things that maybe the human eye can't, because the human eye hasn't seen a trillion versions of an image to show you what might be wrong in a tissue sample or whatever. But one of the ways AI is being discussed around impacting the patient experience is fairly straightforward compared to the rest of the AI examples, and that's around like responses out of a patient portal, so that the physician isn't burdened by a huge inbox of 100 messages a night that need to be replied to. But if an AI, something like a large language model, an LLM, so ChatGPT is like a commercial version of an LLM. You can make your own LLMs as well. One of the things that patients are excited about, and I think health systems are more excited about than anybody, is the removal of that burden of a physician or a clinician reply, where an AI tool would be able to supply an appropriate response. I think there's a little bit of a double-edged sword here, that somebody at some point needs to review these replies for accuracy, which takes time, but the patient would get a speedier response than maybe waiting a couple days to hear back from their provider. So, do you have any thoughts on how AI might impact patient care, patient experience?
Absolutely, because communication is a foundation of the patient experience, the leadership experience, the team experience, everything revolves around communication, and what you deliver, is a communication tool that not only is able to communicate, to the team, but to the patients. Because when you're on the receiving end, of a diagnosis, of a surgery, you want to know what happened. What's my next step? What do I need to do? What are my complications? What should I be watching out for? All of these things. What did you find? They don't remember talking to you after they had surgery. Patients, have versed, a bunch of anesthesia. They don't feel good. They just want to go home, right? So their ability to listen, really ends after the pre-op experience. What you're talking about is being able to provide that communication that helps them to get answers to their questions once they're at home. And that's when all of the questions really start to flood the patient. And so being able to have this tool that could answer those things, and really take the burden off the physician and the staff, that's huge. That not only does that help with getting the patients to where they need to be, but that enables your patients to have that connection with their surgeon, that makes them happy, that helps them to ask the right questions. And when they trust their provider, there's even less lawsuits. So that communication can really begin to eliminate the need for service recovery, right? So there's a lot of things that I see about AI and the patient experience, and I think that's more for another conversation, Eric.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so much is still being defined even to this very minute. It's all a big experiment for now, and I think a lot of it will end up being useful. And though maybe 60-40 useful, 40% you'll look back and go, nobody ever asked for that, and certainly nobody's going to pay for it either.
Now, they will.
Yeah. Well, Jessica, I want to thank you so much for your time to join us on the show today. I know for all of our Georgia and South Carolina listeners, they are in for a treat. Friday morning, 8:30, you're giving the keynote at the Georgia-South Carolina Joint Fall Show in Hilton Head. I wish you all the best for your speaking slot there.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be awesome.
And before you go, where can our listeners connect with you? Your websites, your socials, where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, and my website address is real easy: www.realchangern.com.
And we'll, of course, have links to those sites in the show notes. And on behalf of the entire Doc Buddy team, thank you for listening. Be sure you're subscribed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube so you always get the newest episodes of the show. We'll talk to you again soon. I'm your host, Eric.